Welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to make some gauntlets based off of the Batman film starring Robert Pattinson that's coming out. And a couple quick things of note is that the patterns, like the others, are up for free on Facebook. You can download, expand them, shrink them, do whatever you want with them. They're free. They're yours. Enjoy. With all the craziness going on, I'm just going to try to continue this until... But another thing I want to touch on real quick is the gloves, which I got some gloves and made these knuckles and altered it, and it came out looking pretty cool. If I had had the time to wait for them to be shipped from overseas, or if I had had the money to just go spend top dollar on some tactical gloves, I would have done that. In fact, if I just would have had the money to just buy some all black gloves, I would have done that. But I'm on an extreme budget due to current circumstances in the world right now that is affecting many people, myself included. So I found these gloves at a Ross for very cheap, but they were not black. I had to go through the process of dyeing them. They do have leather in them. Now, these were extra large and they were a little bit too big. I actually wear a large size glove. However, once I dyed them, the leather shrunk a little bit and they're pretty much perfect now. So if you are going to dye anything or try to alter any colors and it has leather, it will shrink. As I've stated in the videos I'm doing this, my best advice would just be to just buy black tactical gloves if you can. And it would be easy to glue this Pattinson style knuckle cap over it and do some other details on your own. That wouldn't be too hard without going through all the craziness that I did. And without me rambling on any further, let's just go ahead and get right into the video. Okay, we're going to start off with the top and bottom. These are based off of my arms. So yeah, I'm putting the patterns, but the thing is, even if you enlarge or shrink them, unless you have the same proportions from wrist to here, not same measurements, but if you have like huge forearms or whatever, anything different than a general proximity, these aren't going to fit. So easy solution for that is to wrap yourself in saran wrap or a grocery bag and then tape it with whatever, packing tape, duct tape, whatever, masking tape, whatever you want to use, whatever you have, and then just cut them off. I cut mine into 2 pieces. Then I need to get them to lay flat. In order to get them to lay flat, I had to put a cut in there, and then a couple other cuts. More extreme articulation on your arm, might need more pattern pieces to get a top and a bottom. Just depends on the person. And these are both just bases that I'm going to layer things on. These gauntlets are going to be like onions or ogres, and they're going to have layers. And to do most of this stuff, including gluing all these V-cuts, I'm going to use contact cement. And how that works is you spread some on each surface to be bonded, allow it to sit 15 to 20 minutes, and then you stick them together. I've already applied it to mine and waited the 15 minutes, so I'm just going to go ahead and put them all together. Now that I put my V-cuts in, you can see they already want to start to curve. These I did just curve a little bit with my hands, but once those are put in place, it already wants to do it. So I'm going to help it along using a dual setting heat gun, get them hot, get the rest of the curve in it, get it to match my arm. Okay, all the pieces are heated and curved so that they will fit better on my arms. They have a little bit of space and slop to them. That's also keeping in mind that I'm going to have some sort of shirt on underneath these. So that right there creates a problem in and of itself. The heat gun is dual setting. This is a relatively inexpensive one. However, depending on what part of the world you live in, sometimes they are quite expensive. With thicker foam like this, you almost always need one. Or you can try to substitute it with other things, but that can be dangerous. And these in and of themselves get quite hot. Like, you should get parents' permission prior to using one or purchasing one or whatever. But now that this is done, we can start building these up. Okay, next thing you're going to need is the layer pattern, as I'm calling it. Originally I was going to do this in multiple layers, but I actually figured out a way to get the same basic shape and look without having to make it overly complicated. I want the people watching it to be able to do it and it to be more of a base pattern you could build off of versus some overly complicated thing that most people get frustrated with. So this is what I'm doing, and you'll notice some dots along the bottom here and some dots along the side. That's basically an indicator of where to stop your contact cement and where to line this up in the front whenever you're gluing it on. You can probably see, maybe, I'm sorry, all I had was black foam. But you can probably see the Sharpie line right there that I put in, and also put some on the sides to show me where to stop. I've already glued one together to show you an example. I didn't put the contact cement all the way, and it left a bit of a gap, but it helped to make this look a bit more flat and robust. The closer in you put your contact cement, the less rounded this will look. In some pictures and 3D print models and artist renditions, it looks more rounded, and others it looks very flat. And some of the other EVA foam builds, I haven't really seen anything on YouTube, but I also haven't been looking, I suppose. But the ones I've seen that are for sale on Etsy as completed foam costume pieces are huge and rather flat. So this is a bit more rounded. If you want it more flat, just don't put your contact cement as far in. You can always fill in the gap with hot glue or scrap EVA foam or whatever. But I've applied my contact cement to this, and I've already marked out where it needs to start. I marked the top, so I'm just not wasting contact cement. And now we're going to glue this to this. Okay, first I start by lining it up in the center. Then I use my heat gun to help press the rest of it down. Okay, for the numbered pieces, 1 through 5, they're all left. You reverse them for the right, same as all the other pattern pieces. And to line this up, this corner here and this here pretty much form a straight line. From there, it's relatively simple to line up all the rest of your pieces and just glue them on. Now, initially I thought about just doing a plate and putting a bunch of cuts in it with an X-Acto knife, but the simple fact is I just can't do as straight of a cut with an X-Acto knife. Scoring something, even with a straight edge, I end up having problems. That looks nice and consistent. And what I mean is sometimes it goes too deep, sometimes it doesn't go deep enough. It's really hard to get that consistent look to get such a straight line like that. And if you're using my original base patterns, this will pretty much line up with the corner of this. Okay, next is going to be the inside piece. You're going to want to bevel the top cut, which means this top edge you want to have at as much of an angle as possible, about 45 degrees if you can. And the rest of the pattern you can just cut straight. I'm going to apply contact cement along this top edge and along the bottom here, and along this edge of the one and along that, and glue them together. Okay, now that the inside left and right pieces are on, how it should look from the front, the top. Next is going to be the outside left and outside right, and it is going to line up with this. We glue it on just like that. There's no bevel on this piece, it's just a straight cut. Okay, the outside number 1 pieces are on, which attach to the 5. And the next piece we're going to glue on is the outside number 2. And you're going to glue that directly on the edge here. However, you need to cut this top edge at a bevel as marked on the pattern so it will come down straight. This is basically where eventually we'll have our little stabby things that Batman has on his gauntlets coming out. And I don't want to call them blades. Honestly, in most of the pictures it looks like the straps used to tighten the gauntlets with like some custom angled metal covers on the end. I hope that's not what it is. I hope it's something more than just that. But anyways, I'm going to glue these both along the edge of either side using contact cement. Whenever I finally attached this one at the end, I did just use super glue for this part here that has nothing for purchase, just because it provides a nice stiff bond, whereas contact cement is much more flexible. Outside pieces on. I did run a little super glue along the inside here, waiting for that to dry the rest of the way and cure as it activates with the oxygen. And what that is going to ultimately do is it's going to hide the hinge that I'm going to have from this bottom piece so that you can't see the side of it. And the hinge isn't going to be anything technical. I'm literally just using some straps, some polypropylene straps to glue in between here so it can open and close, and then some Velcro straps that will eventually attach on the bottom. And this will just help hide all of that, but still give you that big bulky look and shape and all that those gauntlets have. This here will hide the hinge on the side, and you're going to need something to hide the straps. And from the actual 3D modeling and from just looking at it, it looks like there's straps coming out from this piece here. Initially I was just going to Dremel down some foam to this sort of zigzaggy shape, but through trial and error I figured out that I can avoid doing that and avoid a lot of work for other people by simply doing this. And you'll notice there was some dots on the inside number 4. That's so you can line up your straps. And I'm using polypropylene strapping, okay? The actual strapping that it looks like he's using in the film is much thicker and probably even wider than this, but I like this because it's synthetic. The frayed ends you can heat with the heat gun and stop them from fraying, and they super glue and contact cement really, really well. I have some issues and problems with actual cotton, whether it's straps or whether it's elastic, trying to contact cement it or super glue it, because natural fabrics don't work as well. So that's part of the reason why I'm using this. So that's what those are for. I'm going to glue these straps on, and then once they're glued on, I'm going to glue on my pieces here. They're basically going to line up with the middle of the strap, and then over top of that you're going to layer your outside strap cover pieces over the inside strap cover pieces. And I'm actually not going to use contact cement for this because I really don't want these going anywhere. What I am going to use is industrial strength super glue. for a quick close-up of this, I glued these so that you'll notice there's a little gap in between here, the little step up, to give it that swoop up and then level out as it does here. So that's one of the reasons I didn't use contact cement. The super glue cures pretty quickly in about 30 seconds, so just holding it in place will seal it here, and as it cures in between, it won't glue. Okay, now we're going to move on to what was personally my most dreaded part of this build, and it has been the slowest and toughest part, which is making these. My honest advice, if you know somebody that 3D prints, or that has a 3D printer, or you can find someone on Etsy that is selling these specifically, I would probably just do that. Many of the ones that I've been seeing online, they just 3D print these pieces. I made them by hand. There are several ways you can do this. For example, you could take a wooden dowel rod and sand it into that shape, but you're going to run into similar consistency issues as you're going to run into with me hand making each one of these. Either way, if you hand make it, unless you're a master craftsman and have zero mistakes, which nobody does, generally they can just hide their mistakes, you're going to notice that regardless. So how I'm doing this is I'm using 10mm dowels, foam dowels, and they come from Yaya Han. I got these at Joann Fabrics. I will put a link in the description if they have them still for sale on their site. It was one of the only places I could find this, either locally or just to order online. What I do is cut these down the middle as perfectly as possible. You need really sharp scissors for this, and you need to be very careful that you obviously do not cut yourself. Okay, now I've got my two pieces. Each one of these I have cut 3.5 inches long prior to cutting them in half. And you're going to need 5 of these for the 5 top pieces. And much like with the other one, I start at the 1, and I line this up halfway in between this here and the actual top, right on the center. And from there, I contact cement and glue them on. So on the second time lapse there, I use my Dremel to very, very lightly sand these. These are not as dense as EVA foam. In fact, Yaya Han lists this as EVA foam dowels, but I think they're more closed cell foam, but that's a whole different topic. But in order to get that where I sanded smoothed out, I had to wait till my heat gun was really hot, put the heat gun over it really quick, and then wipe that smooth, essentially with my finger to smooth it out. If I was able to get perfect straight cuts, I wouldn't have had any of those lumps or like things to try and smooth out on these, but since I did, I had to do something with it. Alright, next thing you're going to need is the spike cover pattern pieces. Now these are only going to fit exactly if you cut all of these exactly, which kind of impossible. But the width is the main thing. If you need to make them a little longer or a little skinnier, you can. And I'm going to put these a 1/2 inch from the top on the spikes all the way across, and then right across the center on the bottom. Okay, next I'm going to do something I don't think I've ever done in the video, which is make some edging. And what that's going to do is accent this. I suppose you could just extend this and cut into it with an xacto knife to get a score, but I wanted something more pronounced to kind of make it pop a bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is use my dremel to round this edge off. Okay, so all I did was basically put 145-degree angle and left the top flat. And now I'm going to cut this off about 8 millimeters or so from the top to the bottom, or about 5-6 millimeters from the start of my angle here. And I did both edges, so I have 2 of them. And what I'm going to do now is put contact cement along this bottom edge and contact cement along here. And this is going to form sort of an accent that I'm going to glue around like that. I thought that would look much sharper and much cooler. There it is, glued with my sanded angle on the inside, which gives it a nice look, I think. We're just cutting it. Alright. Now that this top part here is pretty much done, the only thing really left to do to it is to glue the spiky Batman fin thingies on the side. But I'm going to wait till the end to do that, before I figured out 100% where I want to align them. I want to be able to put this on my arm first. And I'm going to start on the bottom. So we already made our cuffs at the beginning of this, the basic bottom pieces for both the right and the left. Next, you have the bottom layer piece. I have a left and a right. And I've already heated this a bit and put some curve into both of these. Applied contact cement to one. But prior to heating them, I did sand the bottom of this, just because with this type of heat molding that this particular EVA foam mat has, this doesn't always glue the greatest, even with contact cement. But let's talk about all this really quick, because truth be told, if you were in a hurry, or just didn't feel like doing it, you could pretty much wrap up your build here. What I mean is, if you really just needed gauntlets to get to a convention, or a party, or trick-or-treating, or whatever, and you didn't have a lot of time, you could just build the tops and skip the bottoms. Simply put straps underneath here, let that strap, these straps connect with the other straps with some Velcro, and you've got your gauntlet. Okay, so getting back to what I said in the previous clip, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. But the reality is, there's not much to it. Something I'm sorry, I believe I forgot to mention earlier, was that any of the excess, both on the top and the bottom pieces, I just kind of trimmed off from my initial arm base. And you can see I did that here. Okay, so the parts I was sanding in the previous time lapse was some spots here opposite of where the inside opening of it's going to be, and that so that I can contact cement in some polypro strap, polypropylene 1-inch strapping that will cause this to open and close on a hinge. And I'm going to glue these in with contact cement. Okay, I glued one together, and I use contact cement for the base bond, but I do seal around them with super glue just to make sure that they're not going to come loose, especially over time. Super glue is great for just putting a little bit right around the outside edge after you contact cement it down to help make sure you're going to seal it in place. And here on the left one, I haven't finished it totally yet, so I put my straps in, and now I'm going to pull them back out of the way. Line the front of this with the front of this, and then just push my straps into the contact cement. Like that. Now it can open enough that I can easily slide my hand in, and then I can, of course, eventually add my Velcro to tighten all these down. And this piece here, I didn't reinforce or do anything with, and there is a reason for that, which is that the gloves I have, regardless of whichever ones I end up altering, most likely these, are going to be heavily altered. Once they're on, and this is on, this area right here, I have some space, not only for the strap, but that I can move my hand up and down without constantly hitting this, bashing it, creasing it, messing it up. Okay, now it's appropriate, I feel, to go ahead and attach some Velcro to my straps. I'm going to put the sticky part here and the soft part on here. Okay, since the Velcro is on, I took and glued on my side pieces, which are labeled 1, 2, and 3. And I just glued those on with super glue. I didn't time lapse it because this is industrial strength super glue, and it does take quite a while holding this, and it's a boring time lapse. But I'm not done with these. And how I glued them on was I just measured along the bottom here from this corner down to here, marked off the center, and just lined them up about 2 millimeters below here, because next I'm going to cut out another layer out of 2mm EVA foam that I'm going to layer over top of this and glue on with contact cement. Okay, I glued on the second layer with 2mm, and then used my xacto knife to put some cuts about 2mm apart and about a 5mm line along the bottom. Okay, setting the gauntlets off to the side, I'm going to start making the knuckles, which I'm going to glue on to a mechanic's glove. And this is the finished piece. Pattern looks like this. 5mm EVA foam for the main pattern and 2mm for the filler. So contact cement in the V-cuts and just start lining them up, and that will help to round this out a little bit, but ultimately what it's going to do is spread this open. So we're going to have to go through after this and heat it up with the heat gun to get it both round, like that, and I get the heat gun hot and kind of focus on one area, and then push knuckle impressions into it, like I did on this one here. They're subtle, but they're there. There it is after I've rounded it off. Now to push in the knuckle impression. Okay, I got the definition and bumps put in for the knuckles. Now, what you're going to need is the gap filler piece, which looks kind of like a blended triangle. That is very acute. And you're going to need to heat this. I heated it on the backside and folded it. Now, I think the easiest way to do this would be to trace your pattern on the foam, cut out a square around your pattern, and then heat it and fold it in half and then cut it out. I know that sounds a little crazy, but stuff that is this small is really, really hard to heat and shape. Okay, I actually got this one glued quite a bit better than the first one, which will make sanding easier. However, these are basically weak points, so to speak, that are prone to deform. And at this point I've got them evenly spaced pretty much the way I want. So I have some super glue here. What I'm going to do is put super glue into the gaps here. Careful, of course, not to overfill it or let it leak all over myself, although I do that from time to time. And then what I'm going to do is fill this with some baking soda. So I have pools of liquid super glue in there. Don't get the gel, it won't work. Anyways, pools of liquid super glue that I am filling with baking soda. And what that does is it causes a chemical reaction, and the super glue hardens pretty much immediately, unlike contact cement, which is a flexible bond. This forms very stiff even without baking soda, but whenever you put the baking soda in it, within about that much time it hardens up like glass. So now this will not move. Like, these are in place, they ain't going nowhere. The foam around it of course can flex, but not so much this area. Now I'm going to go ahead and sand this. Part of what I'm doing is I'm going to sand this as level and flat as possible so that I can glue it to the glove that I'm going to use. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and Plasti Dip the knuckles and the gauntlets. Okay, Plasti Dip is pretty much dry, still got a few hours. So in the meantime, I'm going to finish prepping these gloves. I've already prepped this one. So in order to trace this out on my fist where I need it, because I can't just glue it on the glove flat, I needed to put the glove on first. And I don't make a total fist, but I don't have my hand straight. I have it bent right about there, like I'm grasping onto something. That way it'll retain the shape. If it's too flat and I glue it on, the stress, I don't care how much adhesive I use, is going to gradually pry this loose. Now, the gloves I've chosen are Grease Monkey Pro Protect. They're mechanics gloves, and they have the whatever that's called too, so I can actually use my smartphone, which will be great if I want to take a picture at a convention or whatever without having to take my gloves off. So that was honestly part of the thinking. The other reason is I was looking at these at AutoZone. They were about $25, and I actually ended up picking them up at Ross for $9.99 or $8.99. If you have a Ross in your area, I would look there. I feel like any gloves would work, but these had finger guards, these rubberized areas right here, and there's stuff like that similar on the Pattinson gloves. So that's just one less thing I need to make. But this rubber, being smooth and injected molded like it is, will not hold contact cement in the slightest. So you'll see here I've roughed it up with my Dremel once I traced out around where it needed to go. And then I also sanded off the lettering and then hit it with the heat gun. It didn't get rid of it totally, and this strap anyways will be underneath the gauntlets, but I didn't want it peeking out. These gloves are going to be dyed black. Okay, so being that this is both cloth and porous, I've been forced to put several layers of contact cement. I want to make sure there's enough on the surface to bond properly. So what I do is I put in a layer, and then after that, I allow that to dry, and then I add my second layer. Since there is so much contact cement that is not just on the surface, like with foam, I'm going to have to let this set for a minute in order to get it to dry. So by a minute, I mean like, an extra 15 minutes. So I'm going to wait 15 minutes and then apply my contact cement to my hand guards, and then let all 4 pieces sit for another 15 minutes, if that makes sense, prior to sticking them together. Okay, both the knuckle areas are on, and once again, as far as skipping steps go, if you want to just go purchase some tactical gloves, you can. The less expensive ones are usually found on like airsoft sites or places from China where you can get it relatively cheap, which is what I did for like my Red Hood and Wolverine, and I even have a pair for Batman. However, the thing is, the actual knuckle area on them is really small, and it doesn't look much like what is from the movie. And yeah, so that is what it is. But now I'm going to go ahead and dye these with some Duplicolor vinyl dye. Okay, it's going to take several repeated coats and applications of this. This isn't, it's a spray paint, but it's actually much, much thinner than spray paint. And what it's meant for is changing the color of synthetic things. And it works pretty good on materials as well. And the difference between this and spray paint is that this is more of a dye, and it soaks into and is pretty flexible. As far as all that goes, because it soaks into the fabric, whereas spray paint can build up and lay on top of it, and this actually just literally dyes it to the color that you want. But it does take a few coats since the fabric is absorbent, so just be patient, let your coats dry, or just buy black gloves. Okay, and now that these have been turned the color I want and are drying, on the actual film there is a leather piece that goes across here, I believe on the right side, on the left side too, but it's interrupted by what looks like a communication device. Okay, gloves are finished. I use Model Master's Silver Chrome to paint all the accents, and even though I said I wasn't going to put the little communication thing on the left, I did. It was just a square of 5mm foam with a little border of 2mm foam over it. That was it. Okay, so that's going to pretty much wrap it up for this video. I hope everybody enjoyed it. As I stated at the beginning of the video, there's various things you could do to speed this process up. If you're on a con crunch or you're trying to get ready for Halloween or something like that, hopefully you enjoyed how these turned out and you enjoyed the video. I hope everyone watching is having a great day and taking care of yourselves and keeping afloat in these crazy, crazy times. And hopefully this video provided some entertainment or escape or gave you some ideas for your own projects. And I always say I hope this video gave you some ideas for your own projects, because that's what I want this video to be. You can follow it step by step, or you can take it and expand on it. You can take it and simplify it. You can take it and do nothing if you choose. But that's what it's there for. And I appreciate all the new subscribers. I want to say thanks to all of you. It really does help the channel when you subscribe, like, and share the videos. I don't say that all the time. I don't say, please like, subscribe, and share, but it does help, honestly. That's the truth. And the more subscribers, likes, shares, views I get, the more videos I get. That's just kind of how it works. And it's not just like some money issue, because I don't have enough to make much of anything. Most of the time I don't make the budget back on what I'm doing. But if I get a lot of views and things like that, it does help, because then it gives me that little bit of extra to be able to just make a video. You know, since all this stuff started, I was only doing 1 or 2 videos a month, and they were very small, simple projects because it just wasn't going well on many levels. And I've been slowly digging myself out of that as much as I can. But, of course, the future is uncertain. So, for people that have stuck around to this point, I was talking about the, I don't know, whatever you want to call these things here on the end, and how they look like they're just cloth with some sort of like steel grommets or something covering it at the end. And I had mentioned that kind of annoyed me. And the more I think about it, it actually makes sense. Since this Batman is A, heavily steeped in realism, and B, kind of Batman starting out, and kind of mishmashing his suit together from tactical gear and various things like that that he has access to, is kind of how the director was describing it. I actually think it's pretty interesting. One of the issues that obviously comes up with having like 3 jutting blades is if you put your arm down at your side, you might like damage your armor or cut yourself or somebody else. And that is always also, of course, explained away like, well, you or I might do that, but Batman wouldn't do that. Why? Because he's Batman. And that's kind of like the universal excuse used for everything. So, I don't know. But just thinking about it from a realism perspective, it does make sense that it would just be the straps, and they wouldn't be any sort of offensive or defensive weapons, which, I mean, these throwing spike-looking things on the gauntlets look very much like defensive or offensive or distractionary weapons or whatever in and of themselves. Who knows what all this stuff is going to be? We won't know until the film comes out, and apparently the film is being delayed. But what do you think about the gauntlets? Like them, dislike them, things about them you like, things about them you dislike. Please feel free to leave that kind of stuff in the comments below. And thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.